So I wanted to show you guys my pedal board. And the first thing you probably notice is that this is a smaller pedal board compared to what many other guitar players use. But I've definitely been through phases of using much larger pedal boards. And then after a while, these are the core effects that I end up using. And each of these pedals could do a lot of different things. So it's a very powerful pedal board, and I'm certainly never missing anything. It also fits in a carry-on. It's lightweight, and it's very practical for that reason because I travel a lot. So that's always convenient. The next thing you notice is that the cabling looks kind of messy, and that's a point where I've had to somewhat swallow my OCD because I used to have this guy who would make the cabling all, the perfect length and 90-degree angles and neatly side by side. And I just find that then when I'd go flying, it would get thrown around, a pedal would get knocked loose, and then the cables would get yanked, and I don't want to deal with any faulty cables ever. So I find that it's much more sturdy if I use the, factory cables with a solid rubber seal at the end, and then the extra bit of length help if pedals get knocked loose and yanked and I move stuff around. So this is the most trustworthy system I've found. It's also just made on plywood. I have the fancy LA pedal board, but it's just unnecessary weight. Plywood spray painted black has never let me down. So first of all, here is just my dry sound going straight through. It's my trusty Gretsch Duo Jet, which is going straight into my Fender Super Reverb. This guitar is, if I can bring one guitar, this is usually the one I bring. And I've been playing Super Reverb since I was 14 years old. I have one in Nashville, I have one in LA, and one in Denmark, and they never let me down. And then I'm going, instead of putting a mic on the Super Reverb right now, I have it going through this Universal Audio aux unit, which simulates a speaker with a microphone on it, just because it's more convenient for doing a video like this. And it sounds really great. I use it all the time. This amp doesn't have reverb, so I'm just going to engage a basic spring reverb up here. I never play anything without reverb, even just a little bit. But we'll come back to the Helix later, and let's start at the beginning of the chain. This is a volume pedal. It's a very small one, but again, I like that for many reasons, and it does everything I need it to do. Of course, it mutes when I tune. I'll just go heel down, and then I can tune. And also, anytime I'm not playing, I just have it down here. The Velcro's a little loose. And then, of course, I use it for swells. I'm going to turn on my big reverb, and then I'll just hit a chord and fade into it. It's really nice also with my bender. So that's pretty much the volume pedal, and I also use it in conjunction with the gain pedals, which I'll show you in a second. So I'm just gonna go back to my regular reverb. The first pedal I have here is the Fat B by Beatronics, and it's a fairly new pedal for me, but it functions as my basic overdrive. Put a little more drive on it, maybe. Really nice, and all the overdrive pedals I use are very touch sensitive, so I can still play soft and pretty on it. But I can also do, and I rarely use more gain than I can still play full chords, because if you use a lot of metal style gain, you have to play power chords pretty much because it gets too messy otherwise. But I don't use that much gain. This next pedal is the most gain I have on my board, and it's the Cannonball Fuzz from Caroline Guitar Company, and sort of a hybrid fuzz distortion thing. love fuzz because it has that weirdness, but it's still sort of tough. And you can adjust the weirdness on this. There's this fifth knob which simulates a dying battery. So it sounds like the pedal is about to die. It also has this havoc switch, which I never use, but if you set the controls right, you get this sort of feedbacky thing. But I use it for the basic tone. It's super great for leads and riffs and all that swampy stuff I was just playing. The next one is basically like an amp overdrive. So especially when you play an amp that's as powerful as the Super Reverb, you rarely get to play so loud that the amp starts to distort. But, you know, generally I like that sound, so I have a pedal to just simulate that at lower volume. Very subtle, but it's really good to have, and I rarely ever play without at least one of these gain pedals on. If I have nothing else on, I use this one. This is basically my clean tone. And then of course I can combine all these pedals. So if I'm playing with my fuzz and then want just a little more bite to it, I add this one. Not a huge difference, but it does make a difference. And again, all of this is adjusted based on how it sounds in the room and how loud my amp is and everything. Sometimes I also combine all three. That can work. I'll post a link to a video where I played a big solo on the big stage out at Stagecoach, which is Country Coachella. And I had all my pedals on for that one. And it sounds pretty cool. So I can get a lot out of these three pedals, and then I can get even more out of it if I combine it with a volume pedal. Because based on how much signal I send into the pedals, I get a whole new range of gain. This is what Hendrix would do by turning down his guitar volume. I've just never been able to really do the adjusting of the guitar volume while I play, so I like to have it in my foot here. So that's pretty much the gain section, and even when I've had more to play with, these are the three types of pedals that I use up, or types of sound that I end up using 99% of the time. So the next pedal, for years I've had a booster here that my uncle made, which just makes the tone louder. And then lately I've been experimenting with this equalizer. And so this is a standard bus equalizer, which, you know, can boost the bass or the treble or the mid-range. But then it's been modified by these guys in Nashville. So it's all mid-range. Because mid-range is really where we want to be as guitar players. Bass sounds nice when you're by yourself, but it just gets in the way of the bass player in a mix or in a band. And treble just disappears and all the cymbals and everything. So mid-range is where we live, and being able to sculpt the mid-range to really cut through a mix is super powerful. I mean, it sounds kind of ugly by itself, but you can probably imagine how that just cuts through a band like nothing else, and it's so good to be able to adjust these exact frequencies. The next pedal is really fun. That's an octave pedal by TC Electronic. And it doesn't sound like this coming right out of the box. You can connect it to a computer and tweak the sound. So if you get a sub and up, you know, let me know and I'll tell you how to adjust it if you like this. But there are so many good presets you can load onto it. The main way I use this pedal right now is with the artist I'm about to go on tour with. There are a lot of 12-string parts on her album. So I use it to simulate that by adding a low and a high octave. So here it is without it. And with it. Especially with the big reverb. Pretty cool, right? So now, to really show you this pedal, and also to show you some fun things it can do, let me show you what just the high octave sounds like by itself first. So I'm going to turn down the dry and the low octave. And then the high one all the way up. I'm going to switch to my neck pickup. Pretty cool, right? If I turn the tone all the way down on my guitar. That's super useful, especially on recordings, to just put stuff like that kind of way in the back of the mix. Similarly, if I turn down the high octave and turn the low octave all the way up, then I get this growly fun. Oh, gonna turn the tone back up and go on the bridge pickup again. Pretty fun, right? I also love, just for a solo, to just use some of the low octave with a regular dry signal. So like, here it is without it. Or even more. So that's a really useful pedal for a ton of different things. Now the next pedal is probably the weirdest one I have, but I've been really surprised by how much I actually end up using this pedal. It sounds weird on its own, but it's so musical and so useful in a surprising amount of situations. It basically simulates like an old VHS tape. So here's the dry sound without it. I have the big reverb on again. And now with it. Hear that? So it does a few different things. The main thing that I like about it is this weird warble that it does, which is not regular like a chorus or something. It's kind of all over the place like your old VHS tapes. Let me crank it so you can really hear it. Obviously it's getting a little too weird maybe. You can adjust the speed. So now it's really wide but really slow. It's getting a little too wacky, but there's a sweet spot where it just works all the time. Let's see, maybe somewhere around here. Then it also does these noise functions. These ones. It's a little extreme, but it's still pretty musical. Strangely, the gen knob looks like it's all the way up when it's all the way down. I'm sure there's an explanation for that. So that's the noise function. Then finally it has high pass and low pass. And high pass just means that we cut that only the highs get to pass through. So we cut all the bass, hear all the bass. And now, if I play a full chord, and you can also cut out all the treble. But I just like to cut the low frequencies. So that's that one. Then the final piece of the puzzle is the ultimate Pandora's box, which is this helix here. And mostly I use it for just the basic reverb we talked about. Just the spring, in case there's no spring on the amp, like in this case right now. And then I use it for the big cave reverb, which really is my favorite reverb. And I've been through all the fancy reverbs, and I still haven't found one that works better for me than this cave. And I use a lot of big reverbs when I play. And this one just always works. And then finally, I have just a basic tremolo. It also has great delays in there. I don't use a lot of delays. Sometimes I use like a slapback delay for some country stuff, but usually I find it sounds better without it. But it's there if I need it, and it has all kinds of, like, whatever an artist may ask me for is in there. And you could do all these crazy combinations of pedals, and you can connect 2 more with a foot switch, so you have 5 switches to use. And there's amp simulation in there as a backup, or sometimes if you play on TV and you have to be really quiet, it can be nice to just go direct. So then it has simulated amps in there, and it's super powerful, and it's a very nice thing to have there at the end of the chain, so I know I'm prepared for anything. But if nobody tells me differently, I use it for a regular reverb, a big reverb, and a tremolo. And I think that's all of it. As always, I have to caution you to not just go out and buy a bunch of stuff, but maybe it's helpful to your own journey with the gear to just see what I've ended up with after all these years and how I use it and the sort of different types of pedals. It's definitely something where you have to go through just a bunch of stuff to find out what works for you. And ultimately, the goal is to have as little as possible that can do as much as possible. So yeah, have fun with it and let me know what you think.